the text that you are received. I am saying that we have to set the text that we've received aside as far as an accurate picture of this period. We must go to the Qumran text first because they are the unadulterated eyewitness accounts of this period. The other texts have gone through a transmission redaction process. These have not gone through a very long, if any, transmission redaction process. Therefore, I don't expect anything. I don't expect to find Jesus or not expect him. But I can tell you this, that the character emerging here has doctrines and details of his life very much parallel to material we know about James. Now you can say, well, why is James so important? I don't know why James was so important, except for the fact that of all the historical data we have, we know more about James in the first century than almost any other New Testament character from sources outside of the New Testament. Why is that? I think the reason is that James was a far more important character than the New Testament, certainly the book of Acts, which does show he's a very important person, by the way, but most authorities try to avoid this question and don't even get into who this James character was. A much more important character than we normally conceive of. There's more material about James than John the Baptist from other sources outside of the New Testament. There's more than Paul. There's certainly more than any other apostle, including Peter. There's more, in fact, than Jesus himself, as far as identifying material from third sources that have survived. So I don't see why you get the point of view that you're taking, only because one text survived, which has played a paramount part in Western culture, and that has dominated your whole mindset as it has 5 billion trillion other people. But that doesn't mean that that is what happened in the first century or was dominating their minds. We have to take these texts as telling us what was going on in the first century. It may not be James, as this gentleman is saying, could be a wholly other sociological situation. I happen to think that we have enough data in here to point us very much in the direction of the Jerusalem community in the first century. So if we want to know what they thought about the messianic figure, you got to go here. It may be that they didn't have the kind of developed concept of Jesus that these Gospels and all the Gospels we now feel come from this Q source. A lot of people feel that, or are related, at least the synoptic ones, one to the other involved in this Q source. So we don't have three different transmissions there. We only have a single transmission, plus the John transmission, plus a lot of spin-off literature that developed after that. But you say, well, how come that was so important? I believe that was a very attractive presentation. Great literature tends to flourish, but doesn't mean it is historically precise. That's all I can tell you. So why do we have our Jesus here? Well, I don't know that Jesus was the little brother or the older brother or the bigger, more important brother. This group is interested in the righteous teacher who came after the root of planning, the messianic root of planning. They don't tell us much about the messianic root of planning and planting. And at the end of this document, they start telling us about the return of the messianic root. They do have a doctrine of the return of the Messiah. But the Messiah is not their most important individual. At this point, their most important individual is the righteous teacher who rescues them from groping. The Messiah is not their leader. The Messiah is someone they expect to do great things, but the Messiah is not their leader. The righteous teacher is. That's all I can tell you.
So do you think this is a bridge group between Old and New Testament societies, or do you think it's a fringe that
No, I don't think it's a fringe
lost?
group. I think this group was eliminated in the wars against Rome, and I don't know what happened in the Bar Kokhba period. I don't know which side this group was on in the Bar Kokhba period, because we don't have the historical data to tell us. I think this group was eliminated, as all zealot opposition people were eliminated or forced out down to Arabia and became Islam in 4 or 5 centuries later. And this group definitely has a lot of links with Islam. And the tradition, I've been able to watch it in the Quran. There's a lot of material coming straight out of the Qumran traditions on into the Islamic ones. And I think these people ran away down that way when they did escape. The others were decimated in the constant warfare that continued on into the Bar Kokhba period and in the Trajan and Bar Kokhba period. And one of the most incredible things is that they had the total annihilation of the Jews in Egypt from 110 to 115, which has been missed completely by all history books because there were no history books written about it. But the papyrus texts and the ash bins of the various archaeological sites of Egypt have given us the material of the total eradication of Jewish life in Egypt, probably because of the Messianic movement moved on into Egypt, where the Romans under Trajan erased it and continued on into the Bar Kokhba period. We had a total erasure of these people. And the only Jews, I hate to say it, who survived were the Jews willing to go the Yochanan ben Zakkai route. willing to humiliate themselves before Roman power. What does Yochanan ben Zakkai do? He applies in the most illegitimate and totally disingenuous way the messianic prophecy to Vespasian. That is, to me, beyond the pale. To have done that, and that the Jewish people accept that as appropriate, and still consider Yochanan ben Zakkai their salvation, tells you the kind of Jews and the kind of Jewish ideology that survived. This sort of Judaism was eradicated, totally suppressed, as this kind of Christianity, I think, was eradicated and totally suppressed in favor of the Pauline. The Pauline was prepared to live with Roman power, and in fact advocates Roman power. Romans advocates Roman power. Paul carried a Roman citizenship. You have to understand the tremendous might of Rome at this time, and the implications of that power on the total ideological structure of the groups that were allowed to survive. It's like having the Kremlin in Moscow. Now, in fact, I think the Kremlin was probably less successful than Rome was in suppressing dissident groups. So Rome suppressed an awful lot of dissident groups, including all dissident groups when Roman Christianity took over, and certainly anything in Judaism that remotely resembled dissidents was stomped down into Kabbalah, and then re-emerged as an abstract spiritualized movement in Kabbalistic